Hey everybody, welcome into the back room. I'm Andy Ostroy. We have filmmaker Robert Stone with us today. We'll chat with Robert in just a moment. But first, thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you listening, and we'd love to hear your comments. So email us at backroomandy@gmail.com and or post on our social media, and we'll read some feedback next time. And if you like the podcast, please follow or subscribe and rate and review, and you'll be notified every time we post a new episode. So Robert Stone is a critically acclaimed, multi-award winning documentary filmmaker. He is an Oscar nominee for Best Feature Documentary and a 3-time Emmy nominee for Outstanding Achievement in Documentary Filmmaking. 4 of his films have premiered at the Sundance Film Festival, including Closing Night Film in 2009. His recent 6-hour epic history of the effort to land a man on the moon, Chasing the Moon, from 2019, won the prestigious DuPont Columbia Award, and was seen by 8 million viewers in the United States alone, and was broadcast in 13 foreign countries. Over the span of his 40-year career, his work has been broadcast worldwide and screened and honored at countless film festivals. Film critic Owen Gleiberman has called Stone, quote, one of our most important documentarians, having directed, quote, 2 of the most explosively insightful documentaries of the last decade. And he's here with me in the studio to discuss his terrific 2004 documentary, Gorilla, The Taking of Patty Hearst, which has a special screening and discussion/Q&A at Upstate Films in Rhinebeck, New York on Wednesday, July 1st at 7 p.m. Robert, welcome in the back room. You are literally in the back room, in the studio with us. It's nice to have you here.
Nice to be here. Thank you.
So we're going to talk about your film, Gorilla, The Taking of Patty Hearst. It's a 2004 film, and it's going to have a special screening at Upstate Films next week. We'll give out the details again later on. It's about the Symbionese Liberation Army's kidnapping of the heiress, Patty Hearst, in 1974. I watched it this week. I'm trying to remember if I've seen it when it first came out. Like a lot of other things in my life, I can't remember. But I do...
Oh, come on.
I do remember this week watching it. And it was a fantastic film. You know, it's a fascinating subject that I think will always be fascinating for the obvious reason, which is... did she join the SLA, or was she just terrified? Do we have an answer for that yet?
You're asking me this?
Yeah.
This is the first question?
Yes. Let's set the table. Like,
okay. This is the question everybody asks, and why it's been so fascinating. Why it was so fascinating to the entire country during the 2-year escapade, 2.5-year escapade of the Symbionese Liberation Army, is after Patty Hearst was kidnapped and then announced that she'd become a member of the SLA. Yes, the question was, was she doing this at gunpoint? Was she terrified, just trying to stay alive? Or did she actually join them, right? In some ways, it's kind of a facile question, honestly. Like, here's the situation. When she was arrested, there's no defense, legal defense, by saying you were brainwashed. Like, it's not a legal defense, right? Oh, I did it, but I was brainwashed. That doesn't fly. So her lawyers, including F. Lee Bailey, one of the guys who defended O.J., we remember, said, you got to say that you did this all under duress and you had a gun pointed at your head. And when you made those tape recordings that she made saying, death to the fascist insect that preys upon the life of the people, it was always like, gun to do this or we're going to... Okay. So, and the jury didn't believe her and they sentenced her to prison. Well, they didn't believe her because it wasn't true. Now, that doesn't... This is where it gets a little complicated. She was kidnapped. She was locked in a closet. She was raped.
And those are facts.
This happened to her, yes. Okay? Now, we all like to think that our political views are arrived at through some rational understanding of the world and that they're kind of fixed in who we are. Nobody likes to think that they can be turned into a terrorist. But the reality of it is we're pretty malleable and we tend to believe what those around us believe. And if we get sucked into an information bubble and we're surrounded by like-minded people, our political views can change. as I think we have all seen in this country in the last 10 years or so.
We sure have.
Right? People who seem perfectly rational and, good, upright, standing citizens have
joined a cult.
Yeah. They don't perceive it that way, but they are behaving in a very cult-like way in their adoration of somebody who would previously, they've all, even J.D. Vance said, he's a Nazi. He's like America's Hitler.
Right.
Okay. So this happens. It happened in China, Mao, the millions of little red books, and Stalin, Nazi Germany, obviously, Cambodia. This happens. Okay. And it happens on a large scale. It happens on a small scale. So, and everything that I'm saying to you now, I have said in front of Patty Hearst. She's not interviewed in the film, but she did promotion with me when we premiered at Sundance. Now, she would never say this, but she agrees. She said that the film is the most accurate portrayal of what happened. And she's agreed with me when I say this, that, we call it the Stockholm Syndrome, which is a syndrome that was named after a bank robbery in Stockholm in the early 70s, where the people who were bank employees who were held hostage came to identify with the people who were holding them hostage. And it's like they fell in love with it even. Like, it was really weird. And so she had Stockholm Syndrome. Well, what is Stockholm Syndrome? Yes, this exists as a psychological thing. But the reason this is an important question, the reason I said it's sort of a facile question, is that it's a way of otherizing what happened to Patty Hearst. It's a way of saying, oh, that wouldn't happen to me, right? So the question always is, well, is there something about Patty Hearst in her childhood, perhaps, something about her that made her susceptible to this, and therefore she's an interesting person, because if we just figured out about her personality, we could figure out what happened to her. No, that's the wrong question. That's a question everybody's always asked, but it's the wrong question, because it can happen to anybody. And it's a terrifying thing to think about.
Sure.
But it's true.
If you're talking about being locked in a closet and being raped and being taken away from your family and everything your fiance and everything in life that's protected you, and in that moment you are just hoping that you will live. Yeah, I think for people to reduce it down to a black and white issue is a little naive. To play devil's advocate, watching the film reminded me of all the things that I remember seeing as a 15-year-old kid back then. I remember seeing the bank robbery photo of Tanya with a machine gun, the tapes of her as an angry revolutionary, renouncing her wealth and her privilege and disparaging her family, her parents, calling herself an urban guerrilla. In the back seat of the FBI vehicle when she smiles and clenches her fist. It's hard to look at all that and go, oh, of course she was turned. But what is that?
What does that mean? Like, what I'm saying is that she believed it.
Yeah.
And it was like a cult. And once she got out of it, she reverted back to her former self, which I think is a note of optimism about where we are today. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I think
that's a great way of looking at it.
As it has, look at all through history. This will pass. People would go, oh, wow, I really got caught up in something. They're not bad people. They got caught up in something.
Well, it's interesting you're going there, because that was going to be one of my questions to you, is the relevance of your movie and part of the narrative that you're talking about, how it relates to today's politics, which is why having a screening of it 22 years later is interesting, because so much of what happened then, so much of what happened in this film, the cultism. Sin Q was a cult leader.
He was. And, I should add to this. This is not just a parable of MAGA. It was never intended to be, obviously, because it was made 22 years ago. But it's also very reflective of what's happening on the left as well. There's polarization happening, and there's extremism happening. And, the prerequisite for all of that is the absence of doubt. Okay? And that's where it starts to move into theology, where politics becomes theology. And I see this happening. So what happened was, I got the rights to the film back after 20 years, and I looked at the film again. I was like, wow, this is like this is just as relevant now as it was then in some ways, and in different ways. And so I did a 4K restoration, laboriously went through the whole thing and like brought it up to sort of modern contemporary standards. And actually, it was when One Battle After Another came out. You know, I got a call from my distributor, Magnolia Pictures, say, hey, we should re-release this. This is like, yeah. So, you know, all the people are talking about this again because of there's a clear resurgence in political polarization and extremist thinking on both sides.
And so let's go back in time now. What first drew you to Patty Hearst's story? And why did you feel now was the right time to revisit it? Was it purely about the political rhetoric, the cultism, the political violence that exists today, or some other reason as well?
Well, there were other reasons. Look, I think you and I are the same age, so this was a huge. Yes, we're both 100 years old, but this was a huge thing in our formative years. And I mean, the whole country was glued to this.
Yes.
It was insane. It's one of the first like modern mass media spectacles that just went on and on and on. There's really hardly anything I can think that compares to this. And I always thought it was a great story. I'm a child of the 60s. I grew up in the 60s in a college town. So I was exposed to a lot of the craziness that was going on in the 60s, even though I was really young and a little kid. And, you know, one of the things that I think I at least think about is like, how did that all come crashing down? And, you know, because we were teenagers in the 70s, so we were not part of that generation, right? So everything was kind of changing, and like the revolution like never materialized. All the idealism, like by the time we came along, it was just like cocaine and disco, right?
Yeah, and it was never televised either.
Yeah. But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, what happened? That was it's always been an interesting question for me, and I've made a lot of films that deal with like, well, how the hell happened to this crazy moment in time, and how did it fizzle out? So people say I'm really gonna sound like I'm 100 years old, but I think there are three moments that people talk about when the 60s died. Altamont concert, which was profiled in that great documentary Gimme Shelter, Rolling Stones concert in Altamont Speedway, south of San Francisco in 1969, which was like after...
People, stop.
Yes. Why are we fighting? We don't want to fight.
Yeah. And then my favorite line from that movie was Keith Richards going, hey, if that dude doesn't stop, I'm leaving. We're leaving,
man. Yeah. Anyway, it's a fabulous film. It was like the opposite of Woodstock. It was a few months after Woodstock, and like, you know, it was a West Coast, and everybody took bad acid, and the guy tried to shoot Mick Jagger, and he got killed. And anyway, it was a terrible thing. I was like, oh, the 60s is dead. So the 60s lasted from Woodstock to Altamont, which is like 3 months, right?
Right.
That's not fair, but you know what I mean. So there's that, and then there's like the Manson murders, and that's like, oh, that's when the 60s died. There's a Manson.
That's heavy,
right? I think it was the SLA. I think the SLA took all of the hyperbolic political rhetoric of that time, elevated it to a point of surreal paranoia, got in the car, took the keys, and drove it off a cliff. And I think that was the end of it. And every parent in America whose kid had gone off to college and come back a Marxist, me too. You know what I mean? I wondered what the hell. I had this nice kid, and they went off to college, and they came back, and they're like spewing all this Mao, you know, Che Guevara posters. Like, what happened?
And
they all looked at Patty Hearst.
But then it was like, at least he's not robbing a bank.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, but they all looked at Patty Hearst. I think that was part of the fascination of the story. It's like, oh, that's what happened. My kid was brainwashed.
Right. Well, it's an easy excuse.
Don't you hear that again today?
Yeah.
You do.
So true crime, which we know is a big genre of documentaries today, wasn't as big or even big back in the early 2000s when you made this film to the degree that it is today. Was it the true crime-ish aspect of this story, or was it the deep psychological journey that she went on and the country went on? Like, what was the point in your career where you were like, I've got to make a movie about that?
Oh, I wanted, it was about 10 years that I wanted to make that film, and I could never get funding for it.
After the kidnapping?
No, no. It took me before I actually made.
Oh,
before I actually released the
Wow.
film. It was 10 years of struggling to raise money, pitching it, getting turned down. Because look, here's the pitch. I'm going to want to make a movie about the Seminolese Liberation Army and kidnapping. So you got an interview with Patty? No.
Right.
Come back when you got an interview with Patty. Well, she's not going to talk. And if I ever did get her to talk, the Seminolese Liberation Army wouldn't talk.
Right.
And they're the more interesting. As I said, Patty Hearst, she's a lovely person, but she's not. Everybody thinks she's interesting because this thing happened to her. Just because something interesting happens to somebody doesn't mean that you're interesting.
Right.
Right? What's interesting are the people who got so whacked out
Right.
and were so kind of brilliant in manipulating the media.
And you have some of those in the film for sure. And they are
So that was the
truly
thing.
riveting.
And so at a certain point, I knew this was going to be a good film. I just knew it in my guts. And every executive was turning it down. Every network, nobody wanted to make this film. And I just said, screw it. I'm just gonna go make it. And I started, and then BBC came in, and then eventually PBS came in, and it all eventually came together. And then it got into Sundance, and it was a very successful film. But nobody wanted to make it.
Do you think it would be easier to make it today?
No, it'd be exactly the same thing.
Really?
You got an interview with Patty? Nah, get out of here. Yeah, it'd be exactly the same thing.
How about an AI
true.
video with Pat?
Yeah, there you go.
We could just generate
Yeah,
that.
we could just generate it. Yeah.
For people who think they already know this story, what are the biggest misconceptions about Patty Hearst that your documentary challenges?
My film's not about Patty Hearst. It's about the Seminolese Liberation Army. It's about political extremism, and it's about how the media was utterly manipulated by a gang of not that bright college students or former college students, and allowed them to capture the attention of the United States and indeed, part of the world for many, many months. So it's a lot of it is about the media. That's really, the focus of it. I mean, to the point where, they would use, they tried to present themselves in these tape recordings that they would send to the media as if they were some gigantic underground army with units. They're talking about like the anti-aircraft unit of 6B of this SLA, and talking about she's a prisoner of war under the terms of the Geneva Convention and all this stuff. And the media and the Hearst family would regurgitate this stuff and actually use the rhetoric on national television and describe. It's insane. It was the most crazy, and honestly, it's hilarious, right? In retrospect.
But I have to say, as a viewer, you did move the needle somewhat for me on Patty herself.
Oh, well, interesting. In what way?
Yeah. Well, I think whether intended or not, the film does ask the question, which is why I opened with the question of, did she turn? Did she fake it? What went on? And I think, and again, for me, I have to admit that at 15 years old, I don't know if I was still at sleepaway camp. I know I was at 14, but so I wasn't obsessed with the media and the news and crime and all that was going on in the country, certainly the way I am now. But I kind of tucked the story away for all these years, like I think most people have. And I think the genius of your film is that it takes this monumental thing that happened on all the levels we're talking about, from a crime, from the cult aspect to the philosophical, the psychological questions and aspects of that kidnapping. And it brings it into the present tense. And for me, I've been yapping about how Trump supporters are in a cult for the last 10 years. So the cult aspect of it is very prominent for me. And so watching the film just made me look at her in a different way. Whether she was, quote unquote, brainwashed or terrified, it did move my needle a little bit, because I had kind of semi-concluded that she was like a lot of, what we call Gen Z today. They get caught up in the revolutionary aspects of all kinds of things that are going on in the world. We see that today in a very prominent way. We just had elections, primaries in New York City, where one could say it was based on a lot of this revolutionary stuff about world politics and so forth. Yeah. And so it did leave me feeling sorry for her as a father. I have 3 daughters. I mean, I know as filmmakers often enter the process with their vision of what this film is going to be about. But I made a movie about my late wife who was murdered. I've had people say to me, it was a crime film, it was a family drama, it was a biopic. And I'm like, okay, well, so for me, it's always been about like whatever the viewer takes away from it. And so I can only speak for myself. Obviously, the movie was about the SLA and the kidnapping, but I found it to be an interesting look back into who Patty Hearst was, who her family was, watching her dad. When her dad said, we don't have the money, we're done. And I was like, fuck. Like, did she hear that kind of shit her whole life? You know, like, did her father ever really show true love, or did he give up on her when she was younger? How much of that played in? So it was a look into her and her psyche for me.
I think all of those things are true, but I also think it's important to keep in mind that even without those things, this could have happened. So I'm saying that, like, those. So there is this idea of the poor little rich girl who takes turns on her father, and as a way of explaining, again, as I said, otherizing. Like that could never happen to me. There's something about her, but that's why the film ends the way it does, and I don't want to give it away.
Right.
But but I'll say something else. Like, I have a theory about mass media spectacles, and this is why I've made so many movies about them. And I think, the world is a very chaotic place, and it really makes no sense on a day-to-day basis. And then these events happen that capture our imagination, and they could be traumatic, they could be violent, there's all kinds of things. But why do certain events just seem to crystallize everything that's going on, and they become they're narratives that we kind of fit the chaos into, and I go, oh, that makes sense. Like, there's a moment in the film where Mike Borton, who was one of the later members of the SLA, he goes, it was like compressing matter, like in a black hole. It was like this story took everything, the craziness that was going on in the 60s, from the Kennedy assassination in 63 to the 68, all of Manson, it was a crazy time, right? And it just compressed it and turned it into a narrative that was understandable and kind of made sense. And that's why it was so fascinating. You couldn't turn away. Just like, the rhetoric, I hate to come back to Trump, but we are living in this moment. The over-the-top rhetoric, the shit that he says, why am I even listening to this, right? But you can't not listen to it. And the SLA, the rhetoric was so crazy and so absurd, you just had to listen to it. It's like, can you believe what these people said? This is insane. But so that was part of it. So, and I think that was, as a filmmaker, that was one of the things that attracted me to it. And also, I will say, obviously, as a filmmaker, it's great to tell a story for which there's everything is filmed, right? So that was a big. When I found this incredible treasure trove of footage, and the archival is amazing. It was a once in a lifetime gold mine of footage. That I came across, which is a whole story in itself. Yeah.
Well, yeah, you have tapes, you have letters. The archival is amazing. Was there something that when you were going through the archival that may have shaped or changed your understanding of what she had gone through at that time?
Well, I knew that tape recordings were going to be a central element to it, because you're hearing her voice, and you're hearing her voice through time. It's the film plays out, from the day of her kidnapping, day one, it
evolves.
Boom, boom, boom. So you're seeing the thing move chronologically, and you're hearing her change, and you're hearing the tone of voice, and you're hearing the other members of the SLA too. And so this disembodied tape recordings, and they're eerie, and they're
Well, it makes you wonder. Like,
it makes you wonder, because there's no narrator in the film. I don't do films like that. So there's nobody telling you what to think or what to make of anything.
But you use your imagination. Like when I remember the tapes, I didn't remember exactly what was on them, but watching your film, obviously you get to hear them. And it's easy for the mind to wander, and like you start thinking, you close your eyes and you're like, is someone standing next to her literally with a gun to her head? And she's reading. But then you say, she actually sounds pretty damn sincere.
I think early on that was probably the case.
Yeah.
And then as time went on, I mean, you can hear it in the recordings. I think early on she's clearly reading from a script, and then at a certain point,
It's visceral. It's
certainly after the shootout, folks. There's a great shootout.
oh man.
After the shootout, where she certainly believed, the FBI believed that she was in that house and that the FBI had killed her. That's when, you can tell in that recording, she's all in. She's like, these FBI is going to kill me. They tried to kill me. Mm-hmm. They thought I was dead.
It continues to make you wonder when you're watching and listening, what has happened to her?
Yeah. Well, there is no answer. All I can tell you is I got to know her a little bit when she came out to Sundance, and that was a great experience.
What was the first thing you said to her?
Well, so here's the story. So the film got accepted at Sundance, and we're going through looking at the list of other films that are at Sundance, and there was a dramatic film because she was an actress at that time, and there was another film that she was acting in that was at Sundance. So it was like, oh, she's going to be there. And then the debate was with my distribution and publicity team, like, should we just ambush her, like when we're there, or should we take the high road and show it to her beforehand? And I opted to, it was a risky move, very risky move, high risk, high reward. I opted to show it to her beforehand. Mm-hmm. So we set up a screening for her in New York, and she showed up with her husband, who was her former bodyguard, and John Waters.
Mm-hmm. Oh, interesting.
Who's her best friend. And
did not know that. That's even
so
more
they watched the
interesting.
film. I wasn't in the room. I came in afterwards. I walked in the room, and John Waters stood up and shook my hand, and she came over, shook my hand, and she said, this is the best thing that's ever been done on this. Like, what can we do? Mm. I was like, and we just had a lovely conversation. And then with the premiere at Sundance, I said, let's not tell anybody that you're there. Okay. So I went up and started the Q&A, and somebody like the third question was I can't remember what it was. I thought that would be a great question for Patty Hearst to answer. And in fact, here she is. She walked, it was like the place went absolutely psycho.
We just happen to have Marshall McLuhan with us right now.
Yeah. And of course, from then on, all the questions went to her. And then, but she did, because she's a celebrity, like she did press with me. We did press all over the world. We were mobbed. It was insane. And she was very gracious, and she's lovely. And I've been in touch with her since, occasionally.
You know how
screenings of mine. She's a lovely person, but she's not somebody I would have ever wanted to interview in the film. Never.
Why is that?
It's not like I did. It's not like, oh, you tried to get her and you didn't. No, I wouldn't want her, because I have her as the person who's interesting in that story is Tanya, her nom de guerre.
Right.
Not Patty Hearst looking back on it now. I mean, that film was also, Paul Schrader made a very underrated movie called Patty Hearst in 1988, which I think is great. The Thing Rames is Sing Q, and Natasha Richardson is Patty Hearst. And that tells her story based on her book. Mm-hmm. And I think it's really good. It's really funny. But I thought after the passage of time, so to get back, I was saying about mass media spectacles. So the mass media spectacle happens, right? And then the first thing, everybody wants to know the story behind the story. What's the thing I didn't, right? But after the passage of 40 years, now we're 50 years out, right? Are we 50? Yeah, we're 50
over
years
50 years.
Yeah. Then the spectacle itself becomes interesting, because people are forgotten. Like this, why were we all so obsessed with this? What did it have to say? What was it? What did it tell us? That becomes interesting again, right?
You think it's interesting because I think this is the way it is today. Like, she was just a rich white girl, right? Would it have been interesting if she wasn't a rich white girl, or she wasn't the daughter of?
No, well, of course,
Hearst.
But that was a whole thing. That's why they kidnapped her. Her father was like the Rupert Murdoch of that time.
Right.
Like, imagine if Rupert Murdoch's daughter was kidnapped by terrorists, and the same thing. Can you imagine? I think Fox News would do the same thing. They'd play the tapes. They'd da-da-da-da. Like, what are you going to do, right? and then this group would become superstars.
But they also did wacky shit like kill that black
Yes.
official. Even the people you interviewed who were part of the SLA back then, they, without giving too much away, they lament these decisions.
Yes. But this was the ultimate sort of, I guess, wokeism run amok. Like they thought by killing a celebrated black politician in Oakland, that they would, as white people, that they would purge themselves of their racism. Right? Because you see what I'm saying? In this weird, twisted way. And it was also for Sing-Q, whose idea this was, it was the crossing the Rubicon. There was no coming back after you did that. You're not going home to daddy, right? And I'm not talking about Patty Hearst because this happened before the kidnapping. There's no going home to daddy or going home to mama. Right. You're now a murderer. So there was that. But this whole like, oh, we're going to kill a black guy to prove that we're not racist. Like it's
nuts.
It's nuts. And I think they realize now it's nuts, but this is what happens. When you're in a cult, you can do all kinds of crazy shit.
So you mentioned that the film is about the SLA. They've often been portrayed as either revolutionary idealists or dangerous extremists. So I object to that. I don't think anybody's ever portrayed them as what do you say, the revolutionary idealists? Oh, I'm sure there are people today. You can walk down the street and they'll tell you that. Yeah,
yeah, maybe.
Yeah. Look, when I was in college, not too long after this, I interned because I was majoring in broadcast journalism, so I interned at WBAI, and my job was to rip the news off of the machines, the wire machines, and just rewrite it so that the news director, I think his name was Robert Knight at that time, so he can read the news in that evening's broadcast. And I remember there was a story about some terrorist act or whatever, and I wrote, I shortened it, and I was like, terrorists and whatever today blew up. And when he looked at it, he was like, "Oh, terrorists. We don't use the word terrorists. We use revolutionaries."
Right.
And I was like, "Fuck, then they're not teaching me that shit in school."
Right.
And I think that kind of mentality still exists today.
That's true. I think the Weather Underground is kind of romanticized a bit more.
Sure.
The SLA is kind of looked upon as a bit of an embarrassment because they were so over the top. They so wanted to be the Weather Underground, but
they also had a pretty good plan that they just fucked up. I mean, let's face it. That's it. I mean, they had a pretty good plan. They were giving out food in the streets.
Yeah.
No,
that's the thing. They were so successful. Yeah. They were so successful because they kidnapped.
But they were incompetent,
and they had money. They tapped into one of the richest families in the world, and the biggest media empire in the world. They got. That's the thing. They were just a bunch of clowns, but they got further than any other revolutionary group in this country ever.
And they
blew it because they had nothing to say, ultimately.
That's right. They could have ended up a lot more legit than they did, but they didn't. Looking back at America in the 70s, you got Vietnam, you got Watergate, political violence. Was Patty Hearst's story then and how it's viewed today still like in that zeitgeisty realm? Like it literally was like, I mean, you say it was sort of like the punctuation or the end of the 70s. Which in many ways...
Or the 60s.
60s, rather, as it probably was. But it did seem like it was just... It arrived at the perfect time to encapsulate the moment we were in as a country.
Yeah. I mean, exactly. I totally agree. That's why it was what it was, because it was the perfect story at the perfect time that seemed to make sense of the chaos that had come before, that everybody was struggling with and everybody wanted to make sense of.
You mentioned the Stockholm Syndrome before and the bank workers. I started thinking about Dog Day Afternoon. Do you happen to know whether or not that riffed off of this story in a way?
Well, Dog Day Afternoon, what was that, 70?
It's like later 70s.
No, I think it's
75,
it's 72,
76.
I think.
Oh, really?
I think.
Oh, interesting. Let's look that up.
But I do believe it was after the Stockholm bank robbery thing. Because there is that interplay with the bankers and the...
Yes. And they did it in a comedic way.
Yeah, but there's an awareness of that psychological interaction, which hadn't really occurred to people before. Although I'm sure it has happened throughout history. It's just we didn't have a name for it.
What is it? What year? 75.
Oh, interesting. So Dog Day Afternoon came out right in the middle of this.
Right.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, I wonder what.
But obviously, it was scripted before, and you know how
Right.
long it takes to.
Yeah. Of course.
Yeah.
What do you want people today to see and take away from this film?
Well, I hope they're thoroughly entertained, and I hope it makes them think a little bit about how, by isolating yourself in an information bubble, by only reading and exposing yourself to news and opinion that comports to your preconceptions, that's not a very healthy thing to do. And even though it might seem, totally legit, and all of this stuff seems to all make perfect sense to you and is organizing your world in a certain way that's comfortable and you're happy with, that you're actually potentially leading yourself into an intellectual cul-de-sac, you might say.
Cul-de-sacs are often very pretty and bucolic.
They are, and it is very comfortable and beautiful and bucolic to be in such a place politically. It's a comfortable place. It's not comfortable having a political view and then picking up a news article that makes you go, oh, maybe I was wrong about that. Maybe there's another side to this. That's uncomfortable. I don't want to read that. I would rather read something that tells me that my views are completely 100% correct. We live in a world now, as I was saying before, where we're all slaves to algorithmically produced and generated news feeds. And this breeds extremism. It breeds polarization. It breeds intolerance. And it breeds an absence of doubt. And that's a very dangerous thing.
Sure. Well, you're raising a really interesting point. If the Patty Hearst kidnapping happened in the age of social media and cable news and smartphones, how do you think the story would have unfolded differently? Like, use your
Luigi
creativity.
Mangione?
Oh, there you go.
I mean, it's scary.
It is scary.
I mean, even just think about 9/11 in a social media world. I mean, already with the 9/11 truthers and all that, but that would have been, on steroids.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Things have really changed, and yeah,
we don't know what's coming. Would have been distorted. I mean, you talked about, the algorithms and the accuracy of what people are fed today and what they believe as a result. Think about this story and how the narrative would have been shaped in all kinds of insane ways.
Sure.
The support for the SLA could have been off the charts.
You
mentioned, Luigi. Yeah. I mean, I think I'm a pretty objective person. I find it really hard for people to go, but the insurance companies, like, okay. So
I have very good friends.
Let's kill the CEO.
Yeah, I have very good friends who are totally down with that.
Yeah. So just imagine what would have happened with this case. After all your research in filmmaking, and I know we touched on this a little bit earlier, but what do you think really happened?
I'll tell you exactly. I mean, I kind of said it, and I've said this in front of her, and she's agreed with me. She joined a cult, and in that cult-like state of mind.
But I mean, at like what point? Like when?
Well, it's not like flicking a switch. It was a gradual, and you can hear it in the tapes.
Well, she was held for how long? It was over a year, right?
2.5 years.
2.5 years.
Well, you can't say she was held.
Right. Well, that's part of my question.
She was locked in a closet for about a month. Mm-hmm. But that's a long time. It's unclear. It wasn't all, and they were in a 1-bedroom apartment with one bed, and there were 6 of them. I mean, there was a sex.
Oh, she supposedly had a relationship.
But they were all having, it was a whole fluid thing going on. It was a cult, okay? It was a cult. And in that cult-like frame of mind, she did what she did, and it seemed rational to her to be saying the things she was saying and believing the things that she was believing. That's the thing. And we're all that way. That's the thing. That's the point I'm trying to make. Mm-hmm. You and me, everybody, our views are malleable. They seem rigid and logical and set in the context of reality, but they're not. And they're easily, if nobody likes to think that we all like to think, okay, if we were in Nazi Germany in 1935, we would have been in the resistance, and like France. France is a perfect example. Everybody in France was in the resistance. Actually, no, about 5% of the population resisted. Everybody else went along with it, right? So, and I think it was I can't remember these. Don't quote me. I'm not Wikipedia here, but it's something like 10% actively collaborated, 5% resisted, and 70% just did nothing, just whatever, right?
Whatever.
Whatever. So, yeah. So, and this is just human nature. And it's not, I'm not, you can't just point the finger at this person or that person. We're all vulnerable to this.
Yeah. I think as viewers, there's a part of us that always wants to think there's some mystery still out there that we don't really know, and that we'll never really know.
No, you can't know. Who knows? The workings of the human brain and human psychology is as mysterious as the ocean.
Yeah, and maybe that's why she's never really spoken, because she doesn't want to be on that hot seat. Well, maybe there are parts of her story she doesn't want to.
She wrote a book. She did press with me. She has spoken about it. She hasn't. Now this happened when she was 19. She's 70 years old now. I mean, she's
writing a book and having an editor.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. Why keep revisiting this thing? She doesn't want to be forever the person who got kidnapped by the SLA. Why should she? Move on with your life.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it is part of the biggest part of her identity.
Yeah, but that's not. She's not. Yes, and she could go around being. I think she did that for a while when she was acting in John Waters' movies, and so she was a celebrity that he could cast because she was Patty Hearst.
Right. To some degree, you could argue that she exploited that part of her life.
To a degree, but she stopped doing that a long time ago. And yes, again, she's human.
By the way, I'd love to see a John Waters version of your documentary. That would be pretty awesome.
Does he do documentaries?
No, that would be the whole. Just imagine what it would be, right? It's funny. You also mentioned the Q&A that she did with you, and if you've been at enough Q&As, of course, as you have, you know that sometimes they can get a little kooky. And you said, of course, she all the questions were for her, but there's always that guy at a Q&A who raises their hand and goes, yeah, my question's for Robert. What kind of camera did you use? Right? And just completely ignores her, right? And everybody's like, that's what you're asking? But that guy is at every Q&A, right?
What was your budget, Jeff?
Right. So you've been a Rhinebeck resident for over 20 years. What does it mean to have this intimate screening in your hometown?
Well, interestingly, with about less than a year, I think 6 months or so after I first moved here, Gorilla came out and played at Upstate Films, and that was kind of my introduction to this community. And we had a wild party afterwards, and that's where I got to know everybody in this town. And now, just actually as we speak, I'm moving to Hudson, and so this is a little bit of a farewell to Rhinebeck for me as well.
The film, again, is Gorilla, The Taking of Patty Hearst. It's going to have a special screening this coming Wednesday, July 1st, 7 p.m. at Upstate Films in Rhinebeck, New York, right in the heart of the beautiful village and the beautiful Hudson Valley. Robert, you will be there. You will be part of this discussion, post-screening and Q&A. And, folks, it is a fantastic film. If you haven't seen it when it first came out, it is absolutely riveting for all the reasons that we are talking about here today, and you will not be sorry if you cough up a few bucks and see this film.
Thank you, Andy.
Thanks for coming in, Robert. Take care. This episode was produced and edited by me, Andy Ostroy. It was co-produced by Maddie Rosenberg and Jen Hammoud for Radio Free Rhinecliff, with additional editing by Maddie Rosenberg, music by Andrew Hollander, and graphic design by Cricket Langell. And with a special thanks to our sponsor, The Epicurean. Again, thanks for listening. Please rate and review wherever you get your podcasts, and subscribe to the Backroom with Andy Ostroy YouTube channel, where you can watch full videos of our interviews. See you next time.